My name is Christopher Monroe. This is my theory conceptual model for COAD 6404, Counseling Theory and Techniques at East Carolina University. The approach that I chose for this assignment was an assimilative integration approach, with my overarching theory being cognitive behavioral theory, secondary theories being person-centered, choice reality, and solution-focused. I chose cognitive behavioral theory because while I do more often identify with humanistic approaches in my own life, I can certainly appreciate the objective nature and the rationale behind cognitive behavioral theory and the work of Beck and Ellis and other researchers. Okay. The artifact that I chose for this assignment, based on my own upbringing in southeastern North Carolina and just the rich southern tradition that I was raised on, I decided to choose the pound cake, and more so the art and the technique of baking a pound cake. Baking a pound cake is no small task. It is timely, delicate, and sensitive. And I thought the more I thought about those traits could also be used to describe a counseling approach. Why a pound cake? As I mentioned, I've been most fortunate to have been raised in southeastern North Carolina. Oftentimes, I was reared in the kitchen, tugging at the apron strings of strong-willed women, such as my mother, my aunts, my great aunts, but especially my late grandmother. She was well known in the community for her pound cake, and while there are many activities that connect me to her, I believe there's none really like the pound cake or baking the pound cake. And so preparation. So before I even begin to make a cake, I read over the recipe twice. I make sure that I have all of the ingredients measured out, laid out at the island, usually in the order that I need them, just to make things easy. I try to make it as foolproof as possible, and I grease the pan. All right, and so in the same way, we have to be prepared as counselors, because if we are not prepared, especially if we know that a counseling or the client is coming to us, we're doing them a disservice by not preparing and not taking the time to ensure that we are successful. All right, the chemistry of it. Before I begin baking a pound cake, I remind myself that there's a method to this, that you start in with flour, so much so that if you start in with flour, your mood will be sour. Or your mood will be sour, excuse me. And so, a lot of people don't give thought to this, but there is a chemistry behind it. All right, so in the same way, there's a delicate balance in counseling. All right, baking. So now the actual baking of the cake is probably the most nerve-wracking of the entire process. You want to get everyone out of the kitchen, especially your heavy-footed loved ones. You want to get them out on the porch, outside. Find an activity that can take a good 90 minutes of your time. And so this process reminded me a lot of the reflective piece. It reminded me of Ellis's homework assignment that you give your client, that you tell them to go at the conclusion of the counseling session, you tell them to go out and you give them an activity, something to bring them towards reflection, self-evaluation. And so in a similar way, that's kind of the baking process. The cake is rising. You want to give it all the space that it needs. You don't want to rush it, because otherwise your pound cake will fall and it'll be a disaster. Okay, and then after that, in the same way that in the counseling process you allow for progress review, I kind of compare this to, you let your cake set. And then if you want to, you can add a glaze. All right, so I've kind of included the 6 glazes on my grandmama's pound cake, or the 6 flavors that are in the glaze. And so in the same way, this is that integration piece, that you pick and choose what you think would be best for your client. You don't try to apply the same thing to everyone, in the same way that not everyone likes coconut, or there's somebody in your family who will not let you put rum in that cake. You kind of have to work with with your client and meet their needs. All right, substitutions are oftentimes remind me of multicultural and gender sensitivities. I mentioned in my paper my friend Rochelle, who is gluten-free and lactose intolerant. It makes baking a cake different, but at the same time, it's, you're bringing more people joy, I suppose. And then this is the finished product. I baked one yesterday. Today is Father's Day. That cake is as good as maybe 3/4 of the way gone. All right, and so this concludes my project. Thank you very much for your time.